everyone. This is Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and founder of Women to Follow. And it's been a minute, so I'll reintroduce myself, although I just did. So it's really great to have everybody here. And I'm very excited about tonight's conversation. We're going to be talking about women in AI, ethics, and storytelling and art. And before I introduce my guest, I just wanted to back up a little bit and say that one of the things that I've been following keenly is how women in AI are underrepresented, not visible when you see news about AI, and how important this is as we move into this big change in our technology, for women to be represented for many reasons: bias, for women to advance, for women to get seed capital. Today's show will kick off this series I'm planning to do and focus on this issue of women in AI and looking at it from different perspectives and different issues. So thank you for being here. Please follow on, we're live on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn and Twitter. And let me introduce my guest and we can get to other things later. Okay. So thrilled to introduce Rachel Wilkins. She's a founder and art crusader. And she has produced and hosted more than 300 X spaces in collaboration with Time's initiative called Timepieces. That's a Web3 initiative. And she also recently, in January, was appointed co-executive director of the Taskforce on Mental Health of the United Nations, and is interested in that aspect of where we're going with our mental health and this technological age. And before that, she spent 10 years as the leading Conception Arts, which was a global platform that supported more than 8,000 underrepresented artists in 14 cities in the States. And so welcome to Rachel. Please follow me at Rose Horowitz 31, Gmail, Rose Horowitz 31, and Rachel, welcome.
Well, thank you, Rose. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure I'm not muted.
I can.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and so nice to actually get some FaceTime with you, because we've been Twitter friends for quite some time, or X friends as we call it.
Yes.
Call it now. And just wonderful to get some time with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, you started in the days of when it was still Twitter. They started these spaces, which I guess came after Clubhouse. And I found the spaces more interesting because of the topics and things. But and I met you through that way. And oftentimes you did your show, the Good News Show, on Monday mornings. And I would tune in and get the latest and the greatest. And plus, in addition to kind of updating everybody on what news was going on in different fields in tech, you would have interviews with founders and artists and people raising money for good causes. So that has always been very intriguing and one of the highlights of X for me.
Well, I appreciate that. It's nice to know that it was kind of a safe space for people, because just for a little bit of context, I had started the Good News Show because I was feeling really just dejected and disenfranchised with the space, as you'll hear a lot of people call it, right? Which is, for those who are not in and around quote unquote crypto Twitter, Web3 is kind of affectionately referred to as the space. And it was becoming a very dark, kind of negative, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and very kind of much the boys bro crypto club. And I just didn't see anybody like me or feel like there was a safe space to gather with like-minded people to talk about how exciting this new wave of technology was. And so I had reached out to my friend Maya Drazen, who is, the chief brand officer at Time. And I said, I'm thinking about starting a show and calling it The Good News Show. Is it too cheesy? And she was like, do it. And then 3.5 years later, and probably several thousand hours of content later, here we are. So
That's awesome.
It's been a wild adventure.
That's cool. Yeah, the X can be the good thing about, and the bad thing about X is that, it can be a terrible place, but there are good people on it, and which is why I'm still on it. So that is saving grace, and having shows like yours. And my hashtag was started on Twitter, so I have a little bit of a affinity to stay there. And just to review, I hadn't said this, but Rachel has received a New York Business Journal Woman of Influence Award and the New York State Citation for her work with the LGBTQ community. She was also named a 40 under 40 LGBTQ leaders by Business Equality magazine, and she's been featured in the Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and ABC News. And I want to give a big shout out to my producer, Stefan Kaplan, at Spinach Social. And please follow him on LinkedIn, where he's most active. I'm so grateful for his expertise and friendship. And, you can be watching this on LinkedIn, X, or YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, I'd love for you to follow to subscribe and follow the channel, and you will see it's all my a summit I did, plus all my shows have been archived on there. So let's go to the beginning.
Place to start.
How did where are you from originally, and how did you start your career?
Sure. So I grew up in Liverpool in the UK, Northwest city, right? Really, we say like the closest city to Liverpool is Dublin, which is, so where a lot of us are very Irish. I had an Irish grandmother, and lots of Irish in my family tree, and moved to the US when I was 27. And have been here ever since. And in terms of my career, it's not been something linear. There's definitely a common thread now when I look back. But I was in my 20s. I was working in kind of the corporate environment. I worked in recruitment, and I'd taken a trip to the US for it was a friend's birthday, and came here and just absolutely fell in love with New York City, like so many people do. Was just completely enchanted. Spent a lot of time in the West Village during that trip, and just something grabbed a hold of me, and I was like, I have to come back to this place. This is magical, and there's something in the DNA of the West Village of New York City, where all those fabulous artists have carved out careers and musicians have made their mark. And I fell in love with New York, and ultimately ended up coming here about a year or so later. And it was like I don't want to say it was a midlife crisis, because I was in my 20s, but I left behind a corporate job and decided I was going to go back to my roots of creating again, and just started to paint, and really just worked on making my artwork. And like a lot of New York City artists, I was, I had a bartending gig at night, I had a waitressing gig over here, and I was just kind of in the throw of like being a young 20-something-year-old, like doing what she, her heart is telling her to do. And it was amazing. During that time, one of the things that I started to see was that for an artist who doesn't have the resume, doesn't have the credentials, the fancy degree, the pedigree, shall we say, that these kind of highbrow galleries look for, it's incredibly difficult to get yourself seen and heard. And
step back a second, tell us like what kind of degree they were looking for. Was it educate, schooling, or who you studied with, or?
I think it was I think there's just like this highbrow mentality. Like if it's hard for, I think, any artist without like an inside connection, right?
Mhm,
A
mhm.
trust fund or a parent who sits on a board of a fancy school to break
Yeah.
into these
Mhm,
institutions.
mhm. Yeah.
And so, I had little pop-up shows here and there. And, the beauty of kind of working in the service industry in New York City is that like you are surrounded by incredible creative people, like musicians and poets. And it was a beautiful time, right? And so, a friend and I, who was also an artist, we were like, maybe we should just start throwing our own shows since we can't, get seen by these galleries. And so we did. We rented the basement of a bar in Tribeca on a Thursday night. It was like a freezing night in November, and we just invited all the artists that we knew, and we threw a one night pop-up show, and it was amazing. We had musicians, performers, and it became something that we just were like, okay, this is the way, right? This is how we do it our own way. And as they say, like if you can't get a seat at the table, build your own damn table.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
we did. And that little show that was, just kind of like a little hobby really in the beginning, we found a business model that we could implement that would allow it to be sustainable. And we were able to take that show I think it was 2011 we started. And by 2020, by the pandemic, we had done over 100 events in 14 cities, and we'd showcased over 8,000 artists around the country. And it was a 10-year ride that was one of the most exciting times.
And the artists were from every, art and music and poetry and a multitude of
It was
disciplines.
Yeah, it was predominantly visual arts. So we have
Mhm, mhm,
painters, photographers, sculptors,
mhm,
and just diverse. Like it always amazed me like how the variety of work from place to place. Like you see work in New York City, it's super diverse and eclectic and a little bit of everything. You go to Texas and everything looks kind of like influenced by the landscape, right? Or you go to Arizona and there's all these
mhm.
terracottas and blues.
Yeah. Mhm,
It was such a wonderful experience. And,
mhm,
and
mhm,
during that time, actually got to really build like a family of creators around the world, who many of whom I still have as friends and have got to go visit around the country as well. So it was a really special time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what happened in 2020?
Yeah. What happened in 2020? Should be like the title of a few people's books, right? It
Yeah.
was it was we I remember in December 2020 we had like a really challenging year, but also we were set to have probably one of the best years in our business in 2020. So we were set up for success, and we had taken our staff on a retreat, and we would like planned out and forecast this whole time. And I remember getting sick. We were in Texas. I had two shows in Texas, and I had to cover for one of our directors who was also sick. So I'd had to fly down to Texas, and I was burning the candle at both ends. Like I was pulling double duty and trying to, run the company, but also step into help a director that was not feeling good. And essentially what happened was I just had like got really really sick on this one trip, and I was on the plane the next morning, and I remember buckling my seatbelt and saying to myself, I just want a break. And this was like December 2019, I guess. I was like, whoever I'm talking to, the universe, whoever, I don't know who it is, but I just want a break. And little did I know I was about to get a big one.
Yes,
I
that's right.
hadn't anticipated that it would be that kind of break, but
Mhm, mhm.
there we were, a few months later with no business. Got a
Because all
very,
your events were live.
yeah, everything was
Yeah.
live.
Mhm,
And it
mhm.
was a very humbling experience to be like, okay, well, this is why businesses don't have just one revenue stream,
Yeah.
right? because if something catastrophic happens, like, what do
Right.
you do?
Right.
And, we were just in a really precarious situation because as much as our business was growing and it was doing well, we were also kind of invested in building new technology for our business, and we, had hired developers, and it was a really tough time. And I don't want to, everybody had a tough time in 2020. This was our kind of lived experience, but
Yeah.
it was a humbling moment. And it was, we lost all our equipment, we obviously lost all our staff, and it was kind of one of those moments where it was like, okay, well, now what? Like, what do we do now? And I think, like, a lot of people didn't do anything for a minute
Mm.
and just kind of hit pause. And
At what point did you start thinking of what you could do next?
well, it's kind of something you alluded to about, like, being in those clubhouse rooms. Like,
Mhm.
I think Clubhouse was such a weird, interesting moment because, and for those who don't know what Clubhouse was, it was really the first social audio app, I think, that we all kind of gravitated towards.
Mm.
And I just heard of rumblings through our artist community that they were, in these clubhouse rooms. I was like, what is this? Like, I know podcasting, I know live streaming, but what do you mean we're listening to each other on an audio app? Like, what is this?
What would you compare it to? Like, I don't know, my analogy was like radio, like you're calling radio. There's a host and
Yeah, I guess radio, but where all the listeners can jump on the stage. Like,
yeah.
that's kind of how it felt. It was a weird time, but it was also like, it was so interesting because I found that, I had artists that I knew in those spaces.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then every now and then there would be like a celebrity that would be in the same space. Like Seal. I remember that the musician Seal was in one.
Pink,
And
maybe once.
yeah, we were like talking to these musicians because everybody was like home
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
not knowing what to do. And
Yeah.
then, I remember there was like this kind of pivotal moment where I was like, there's going to be some kind of shift here, was hearing the president of Time magazine, who at the time was Keith Grossman. He's now he's now at MoonPay, and being like, wow, the C-suite executives are in clubhouse rooms. Like, something is happening here. And that was kind of a rumbling to me of like, this is a whole new media, like, that we're heading into.
So did you feel like it was a democratization of who can speak? Who
I did. Did you feel that?
Yeah. I mean, I remember being in I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk was introducing the women of Web3 who were, with their art and how they were going to promote it and distribute it. And it was like, could have been 5,000 on the call. And, it was like, oh, okay. It's like, you're in a room with them.
Yeah.
And you never expect to be really in a room with them. And plus, the brilliance of the technology that I could go into a poetry reading room, and I'd hear a poet from Africa and a poet from South America and a poet from New York City, and no matter how well you might plan a poetry event or or an art show, to get the scale of that diversity is really is very impressive and fun.
That was something that was so inspiring to me, was like, especially having come from like traveling the country and meeting artists nationally, right? To then, exactly to your point, be like, wow, this is an artist in Nigeria and it's the middle of the night and she's decided that she's going to come and share with us like her gift and her talents. And there's no, like, it's like a free and open space. Like, she can do that. Whereas previously,
no gatekeepers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that little window lasted. Then the gatekeepers came, I think.
And how did you find, one of the things that I found especially in the tech spaces, that there were there were guys in those spaces who would just always call each other bros, like, hey bro, what do you think? Hey bro, what do you think? And or they'd come onto a space and there'd be they had already prepared like 8 or 10 of them were going to be the whole, the speakers, and not letting anybody up, and they all knew each other. And I mean, I had the experience where I once, said something like, "Hey, I'd love to be able to talk. I see a lot, a lot of men up here," and they all muted me, for that.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of
And a lot of that, and I don't know if it's any better now, but that was a negative part of it, and especially because with platforms, especially almost LinkedIn and Twitter, I'd say, are the majority, it's like 60-70% men who are on these platforms. And having founded before the pandemic, the Women to Follow hashtag that had gone viral, I thought it was important to keep raising, voices of women in these spaces, and, in the larger world, of course. Did you find, how did you find that for yourself as a woman in these spaces, and
so,
in that world when we were emerging from the
yeah.
pandemic?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I've met some of my best male friends in this space, two of which I would call out. One would be Rhett Lynch, who I just adore, and I got to see in person in Albuquerque. And another would be Matt Hickson, who is just another brilliant AI person and has become a dear friend. But for the most part, my experience was not great with men in the space, and actually was almost the reason that I left, because I had gone into a marketing space. So it was a Twitter space that was about marketing, and I had quite a few things to say on that topic. And the speakers were saying, the stage is open, hit request, and I'd hit request. And at the time, I probably didn't have a huge following, but I had some things. I had some opinions and quite a lot of lived experience.
Yes.
Having helped over 8,000 artists to sell their work, and I just was not getting invited up. And then, it was almost like they were like kind of killing time, like, oh, we don't see any requests here. And, it kept happening. I kept having those kind of experiences, or I would get up on the stage and share something and then get talked over, or just, condescended, or like, it was not a fun experience. And it was actually, I was probably this close to walking away from the space. And I happened to go into a space that Laurie Grace had organized. I don't know whether you ever remember Laurie Grace. She was a phenomenal, she is still, she's not, she's still with us, but she's not on X. She's a storm photographer, and she just had these beautiful, warm, welcoming spaces. And I came in and I hit the request to come up, and she, not only did she say coming up, she like handed me the co-host spot and was like, you talk. And I was like, wow, that's all it takes, right? Is like one person to just like be kind and like be open and be welcome. And that was really kind of the catalyst that I was like, you know what, we need to do this for other people. So that's kind of, that's really what led us down the path towards the Good News Show. Actually, before the Good News Show, we had a show called Women in Web3 that we did religiously, like 3 times a week for about 6
Probably
months.
on there.
I'm sure. It was actually my friend. That's how I met my friend Matt Hickson, because he kept coming in and saying, "Can I come on the stage?" And I was like, "It's a Women in Web3," but he'd be like, "No, I have an opinion. Like this is helpful." And then, that's kind of where it began.
Yeah. Well, I always say, the more allies, the better.
Absolutely.
And then, so how did you, once you met Keith Grossman of Time, how did you decide to make, have this partnership or, affiliation with them to host these spaces? And what did that affiliation with Timepieces do for you as a host?
So I actually so Keith left, I think it was like December of 2022, and Miss Maya Drazen took the helm. And I was invited to be I was one of 30 community council members that at the time was selected to help shape the next chapter of what Timepieces would look like. So that was a great honor, and I got to work with some amazing artists, many of which were Timepieces artists and collectors and curators, and just a really warm, wonderful group of people. But I got to collaborate with Miss Meyer, and really it was just it was a moment where, I was thinking, as I said, deeply about, well, how do we show up for community in a way that is positive, that in a way that is warm and welcoming. And I think it just, I ran it by Maya and said, how about we do this on the Timepieces account and be, a safe space for the community to land. And she was like, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And that was, kind of how that collaboration began. And we just, we kept it going through bull and bear markets. And I like to think that it was a place where people could come and feel like, whether they were, an artist with 3 or 4 followers or somebody from a Fortune 500 company, they're talking about their next product, that they had an equal opportunity to actually get on that stage and have their voice heard, and more importantly, make connections. Because that was kind of the thing that I've been most proud of, is like the community that has been that has kind of flourished out of the Good News Show has been really something special. And we got to kind of see that firsthand when we did a pop-up event in Paris last year during NFT Paris, and we did our first Good News Studio live. So we got to really kind of see some of those, rich community connections actually come together. So that was really special.
That's cool. They're really exciting. And what would you say was the most surprising guest you might have had on that show?
I don't know about most surprising, but I think there are a few conversations where I still now think about something that was said that like changed or shifted how I thought about something, and particularly on AI. And I think the one that really stands out is Sasha Stiles. So she is, for those who don't know, Sasha is a phenomenal creator. She's an artist, a poet. She is the mentor of a humanoid poet called Telligence, and she just had a huge exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art. Her work took over the entire lobby of MoMA, and it was just spectacular to kind of see her growth and just the expansion of her craft into major institutions around the world. But the first, I've interviewed her, I think 3 times now, and the first time that I interviewed her, she said on AI that she is creating poets, not poems. And that really stuck with me because, when you think about all the conversations that have happened in and around, what AI will do to creative industries and how, the harm that it can do to artists. Yes, and yes, I agree with many of the things and many of the arguments as an artist myself that involve like intellectual property and your work being co-opted and your work being scraped. Yes, there's a lot of gray areas there. But when you think about AI as a tool for creativity and a tool for expansive creativity, that really put it into perspective for me, right? So I would use AI. So essentially what I heard her say is she's not using AI to create art. She's using an AI to create an army of artists where she's at the top of the pyramid, right? So it's almost like saying I can create an army of my own creativity and send that out into the world.
Yeah, I guess I've heard her speak in spaces. I haven't met her, but maybe we've texted. But how does she? I thought it was more about like she would put input into this model she had, and then it would turn out something else. So there'd be another iteration, and it kept iterating, and that would. But I never really understood that her mission was to create poets rather than poems.
I don't think it's her mission. It was the way that she was kind of trying to give me like a visual on what AI as a co-collaborator can be.
Yeah.
I think what we should do is probably drop one of those interviews below this so people can actually go, because I wouldn't even attempt to explain her process because so your viewers know I'm not a technologist. I'm in communications and have been very much adjacent to tech for some time.
Yeah.
But wow, just phenomenal way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's made me really think about that, as I,
And she's really made it into the mainstream because I'm a poet. And every year there's a book that comes out, best poems of 2003, 2004. And I was reading the last one, which might have been 2004, by a poet I know, and she talked about Sasha Styles, and I said, okay, this, and of course, experimental poetry, but this was something else
Yeah.
that, that really nobody had thought about, and nobody thought it was possible.
Right. And she's such an intellect, such an,
Mhm.
academic, Harvard and Oxford educated, like
Mhm. Mhm.
brilliant, like really thinking deeply about the nuance of technology and communication. And I just, every time I hear her speak, it kind of stops me in my tracks. So I'm definitely fangirl over Sasha.
We'll share at some later point, if I don't have, about her big exhibit at MoMA, which is really a huge milestone in poetry world. I see we have a question from a friend I know from X. Craig is saying, Rachel, based on your experience, how do you feel about tagging / letters as art?
Are we talking like graffiti, like tagging, that kind of thing? I
I'm
think,
not sure.
yeah, I mean,
Craig,
if
do you want to clarify what you mean?
yeah, if we're talking graffiti, I think I love street art, and I think
Uh-huh.
especially being in New York and being in and
Mhm.
around that scene and seeing it,
Mhm.
just a
Mhm.
snippet of it. I mean, think about someone like Keith Haring. Like Keith was the, tagging on subways and tagging in all over, the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Like it is absolutely a form of expression. I think there's some people doing interesting things at the intersection of graffiti, tagging, street art, and emerging technology.
Mhm.
I would call out my friends Goldlocks, Goldlocks is a New York City street artist who, does wheat paste all over the city, but is also now using emerging technology to bring that into, so essentially from the block to the blockchain.
Mhm.
So preserving street art or creating digital assets to actually, because one of the things with street art is, of course, it's very temporary, right? It's fleeting. People paint over it,
Yeah.
steal it if it's Banksy.
Mhm.
Whereas, now with digital assets, we have the ability to be able to still capture those moments and actually preserve them on chain. So lots of people doing interesting things at that intersection.
And
So
for those of us, or who are in the audience who are saying, what is she talking about? I'll
happens.
just no, I mean, I just as a journalist,
Yeah.
I always like to go back to basics. So when we talk about, let's say, street art that is then made less permanent, what are we talking about here? For example, in answer to Craig's question.
So when we say, how is it made less permanent?
Well, if you think of street art as fleeting,
Mm-hmm.
and you think of NFTs and what they can do, and AI, how does that? What's the value in that, and why is that important?
I think it comes down to the individual. It's like, why do we collect art? Why do we buy prints?
Yeah.
Why is it important? I think it's important if it's important to the person.
Mm-hmm.
Provenance is a big one. Being able to say that the life cycle of a piece of artwork. How many owners it's had during the process. A lot of traditional art, we don't know the provenance and the story of kind of a lived experience, shall we say, of a piece of artwork.
Mm-hmm.
If only we could look at a Renaissance painting and say, wow, here's all the people that own this, and here's some information about them. We can't do that, but the blockchain allows us to be able to do that. I think there's a lot of interesting things that will still come with smart contract technology, which is essentially when you hear the bad word NFT, which a lot of people wince at because they think Bored Apes and some not so great things, the underlying technology of NFTs, which is essentially a smart contract, is amazing and can do incredible things. And I think we will see artists experiment more with that kind of technology as they, it starts to be more broadly adopted for other things. Everything that has been digitalized will become tokenized at some point. So that is an inevitability. So I do still think we have a next chapter of what digitalized artwork will look like.
So we're really in the beginning or, infant or toddler phase of all this, would you say?
I mean, I think you're seeing a lot more institutional adoption now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's still relatively
Like
early.
timing and doing
Yeah.
this, and the galleries, the Christie's, and
yeah. I do think a lot of the kind of blockchain conversations have, a lot of companies have obviously moved on to AI as kind of the core, technology spoke of their wheel. Just because I think that's where a lot of the money is right now. So I think the attention has moved there, but I think AI and blockchain technology will essentially emerge and coexist together, because blockchain will be that underlying proof point, right? And AI will be the technology that allows us to scale in ways that we can't even conceive.
Okay.
But
So
again, I'm not a technologist, so don't ask me how it works. We got a co-founder for
that. Let me ask you about your becoming co-executive director of this mental health task force for the United Nations.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's, what do you hope to, what is the mission, or what are the goals of that task force, and how is it so important and relevant today as we, go through this amazing technological change?
So just to kind of back up a little bit, so a lot of my work over the last 5 years has been advising particularly nonprofits on emerging tech. So how to navigate, using, whether it was blockchain technology for fundraising or using AI to streamline, some of their processes in-house. So I've been in and around nonprofits for quite some time. And I have my own mental health journey. The last 12 years, I've been in a recovery program. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I still attend, recovery 12-step programs. And so, it's getting help for my mental health saved my life without a doubt. And so a friend of mine is one of the co-founders of the Global Mental Health Taskforce as part of the United Nations SDG 3. And I joined the board. I was actually at their first meeting about 18 months ago, and just, really passionate about this work because obviously I have my own story. And, in terms of like this moment, I think there's a lot at stake. One of the areas that we are particularly paying attention to is not necessarily folks who are already in treatment or already have that kind of, they've sought out help, or they're taking medication, or they are in care, but people who are in that at-risk kind of patient population right now. So folks who perhaps have not even thought about getting, a mental health check-in or seeing a therapist, but, there are things that are coming up for them in their day-to-day life that could potentially be triggers that, could push people into crisis. And, being from an emerging technology background, I am particularly concerned about a lot of the things that I'm seeing. I'm particularly excited about a lot of the things that I'm seeing because, as you know, Rose, I'm an optimist when it comes to technology. But I also think, we have to be realistic about how a lot of what we're seeing right now can impact particularly young minds, when they're in those kind of formative years, especially. How do we navigate this moment and ensure that there are safeguards in place to protect young people? Because, just to give you some statistics here. So last year, 1 in 5 high schoolers seriously considered suicide, right? 700,000 adolescents attempted suicide in 2024. And 40% of high schoolers report that they feel a sense of sadness or depression. Those are staggering numbers. And one of the most alarming things for me right now is that we are becoming more and more technology dependent, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We know that technology is doing amazing things. The advancements that are happening in biotech, right? The ability to be able to improve diagnostics and get to people, sooner. Yes, amazing. The ability to be able to use AI to build infrastructure that allows us to get care to people quicker. Amazing, right? All really exciting innovation in care and mental health. But on the other hand, you have young people at home who are going to a chatbot or an agent to talk about how they're feeling, to talk about, their breakup, to talk about their hormones or things that they're going through that they would usually go to a peer group or a parent or, somebody in their class. And they're missing that vital human to human connection when their frontal lobes are not fully formed. That to me is a big flag that we need to be paying critical attention to. And that's just, one of the things in kind of the technology is having an impact upon. Another thought, and I shared this with you over the weekend, was shared with me at a conference recently by somebody who works at the APA. And for those who don't know, the American Psychological Association. And he said, well, what about this? What if, young people are raised and kind of, integrated with these chatbots and agents to the extent where, as we well know, those of us that are using AI, that all they hear all day is, yes, that's a great idea. That's fantastic. Wow, well done. Mm-hmm. Right? And then they go out into the real world and somebody says no. Mm-hmm. Or somebody says that's a horrible idea. Or you could do better. Like, what does that do to somebody?
Or even, like practicing for a job interview, let's say. You practice for a job interview, you say, give me 5 questions. Mm-hmm. I'm going to answer them. And it keeps telling you, but that's great. That's great. And I think there needs to be an awareness, like one of the things that I've been doing when I have used some of the platforms is to say, and I maybe do this as a journalist, but, say, I'm going to play devil's advocate. What are the 3 worst ideas about this? And give me, what are the 3 worst ideas? And give me some alternatives. But I grew up in a world where I gradually grew into this, this whole new technology. Whereas if you're 20 today, this was part and parcel of how you grew up, and now it's just accelerated, especially since 2022. Yeah. And one of the things we talked about was, in a world where tech is making us more connected, it's also making us lonely.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things I ever heard, and I don't know who said it, so I can't cite them, but was the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's so profound, right? Mm-hmm. For me as somebody who, has, a recovery story, like there's a saying in the rooms of recovery that, your disease wants you alone, like, because it's easier to convince you to
isolate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Once you isolated, and I'm sure that I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm sure there are many such cases of, where isolation is going to make you feel a hell of a lot worse than being around people and being connected to other human beings. So I hope that we can use the technology to find ways to be more connected. It's certainly something that I'm thinking deeply about, especially when it comes to learning about this technology. I don't think we should be doing it in silos. I don't think we should be doing it alone, as there's a lot of resources out there to be able to go take, Anthropic courses, and it's quite overwhelming to do it by yourself, right? Yeah. So, I'm hoping that we can create these kind of learning pods and learn this together and recognize that we're all kind of a little intimidated by it, but that's okay, So
you mentioned that you are, I don't know if it's too early to say, but you're thinking of a new initiative in line with that collaboration.
Yeah, we're actually, my business partner and I, he's a incredible technologist. He's somebody who knows what's coming down the pipeline in 6 months when we're all just kind of, figuring out ChatGPT. Him and I have been thinking, deeply on this for a while. Like, how do we teach something that is constantly in flux, right? Like it's not worth building a course, because by the time you build a course on AI, it's going to be old news by the time you're ready to launch it.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
how do we, create an environment that brings in incredible people who are innovating, but also teaches you something tangible that you can apply in your real life, as opposed to just being like, okay, well, now I know how to, use AI to, I don't know, code something that I don't really need, right? It's like, no, let's give practical hands-on advice where folks can really use this. So we're actually going to be launching something called Camp AI this week. I was hoping, Rose, that I could share it with you tonight, but I don't have a link yet. So we were this close.
Well, I'll be posting after the show too. So
we will absolutely get a nice discount code for your listeners and your viewers as well. So
okay, awesome. One of a friend I have, who we were on the ground when ChatGPT, we were ex-friends, and we haven't met in person but done a lot together. And she said to me recently, well, if you're going to work on this initiative, about women in AI, what can you do to help us? And this is part of maybe what you're saying, but that she used to, if ChatGPT came out with a new feature, she would go and try it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she'd learn it.
Yep.
But now there's just so much, so many platforms, so much news, that she just can't, have her business as a solo entrepreneur and keep up with all these new things. And so her question to me was, well, if you're going to do shows like this, I need some tips, how I can do this. And if you're not in a collaboration, like, is it following, people, a lot of people on Substack? I mean, a lot of people everywhere are writing about this, but like, how do you discern what's, how do you begin to discern what you need to know? And then once you know it, it's how do you know what you want to put into use? What is for your business or your profession essential?
So I have ADHD in addition to all the other things and ailments, shall we say. So for me, I have to really distill this down. There is just too much information out there right now. Mm-hmm. And there's too many platforms and there's too many apps. And I think probably about 2 months ago, went through my bank account to cancel subscriptions, because I had about 20 AI related subscriptions, whether it was, the AI summary app that will summarize your Twitter space and give you a blog article, never used, or the AI video application, which I had 2 of. There's just so many like great, exciting tools that sound really great and they could really help you. And so, of course, this bozo like signs up for everything. And then all of a sudden I'm spending $250 a month on tools I don't use. I know a lot of people are in that boat right now because I'm hearing the same thing. So that's kind of like number one, like make sure that it's not just like busy work, right? Like, is it something that's going to eliminate a couple hours from your day, right? Mm-hmm. If so, great. Mm-hmm. And then I think,
and it can also add to your day, right? Because like if I'm asking for, like if I do a show like this and I say, give me the highlights, but it gives me highlights that I don't want to use at all. And it's, 3 pages. Well, then I have to go through it and say, oh, this is all garbage. This is slop and I don't want to use this. Right. So it hasn't saved me that time.
And also, like, do we need show notes now? Do we like, I was actually just chatting with a friend the other day, and she said, we were talking about podcasting, and I was saying, I'm thinking about a new show, and she's like, I said, I see you're filming a new show, and she said, yeah, but I'm not filming a podcast. I'm just filming short form clips. And I said, what do you mean? She's just filming little clippets. And I said, so wait, that's not a whole show? No, people don't watch whole shows now. They only watch these. So like, I think we've also got to be thinking like, well, what does consumption look like, right? In 6 months, 12 months, 3 years in new media. And we need all these show notes, blog posts, long tail versions of the content that we produce, or do people not even care about that piece anymore? So I think it's just
the same. I guess I'll just turn that around and say, well, what professors are saying about students is that well, I'm talking college level, but
Mm.
all levels, but that, the students are not reading a whole book, and even, they're not signing a whole book, they're signing, excerpts. And then, how do you get the ability to think critically about the whole? And there's so much in our, that's important about thinking in the big way, in the whole way.
Mhm.
And so if you keep breaking these things down into these small snippets, well, how do we,
Yeah.
what will that do to our learning?
I think this is a great time to talk about Mona as a great person to follow, because Mona is just a phenomenal, again, academic, brilliant thinker, tech ethicist. She has some great writing around this topic of, just what the future is actually going to look like, around, agents, around agency, how we protect ourselves and our data during these moments. So I look to smart people, right, to kind of form my opinions on this. And I think back to your point about like, how do you navigate this moment? I wouldn't go down the rabbit hole of like following a bunch of people with a variety of different opinions on Substack. I would just try to find like 3 to 5 people who are working deeply in these issues. Doesn't necessarily have to be, academics, but like, who's actually out there using this technology, and pay attention to their opinions, because there's some really, really
It's a great
thoughtful
tip,
people.
because there's a lot of
Noise.
stuff about a noise about here's this new thing, and here's how you can use it, but not what utility, and what utility will really serve you.
If I had $1 for every post that I see on X that goes, "Oh my gosh, this is the new meta. This guy, spent $1,000 and made $1 million in one weekend using Claudebot."
Yeah.
No, he didn't. Guess what? No, they
Right.
didn't. Like,
Right.
maybe the 1% of the 1%, but I just worry that people are going to lose a lot of time by getting kind of suckered into those like real, essentially like clickbait, thinking that
Yeah.
there's a quick fix and easy way to make $1 million using
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
We'd all be rich if there was.
Right. And one of the things I always do on my shows is, the hashtag started with me naming 3 women to follow, and that was the hashtag that I put out after reading about how many men and women follow men. And so I always ask my guests for their 3 women to follow. We've seen 2, but if I could ask Stefan to maybe put the 3 women all at once here, and maybe people can take down, and I'll be sharing this in other posts. But
This was hard to pick 3 because there's quite a few.
well, I said 3 or more.
That's true. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second person that we haven't, Asha.
Saxena. I hope I'm not butchering her last name. I know her as Asha, Columbia Business School professor, strategist, board advisor. She has an incredible organization, and you should probably connect with her too, Rose, because world leaders in data and AI, amazing. Produced a conference recently at the New York Stock Exchange. I was invited to speak just on kind of like the communications piece, like what the next wave of new media looks like in AI. And just got to know her community and was so blown away by everything that she's doing. And so I think she would be a wonderful person for you to connect to. She's really, again, another person who's really, really centered around how do we ensure that women are not just part of the conversation, but like, AI is it's already reshaping entire industries, right? Whether that's marketing, whether that's finance, arts, higher education. Like, the people that use these tools and understand how to use these tools aren't just more productive, they're more valuable, they're more hireable, right? So women need to be a part of that conversation. Like, women don't want to get left behind.
Right. And that's one of the things in looking at stats that I see is Okay, so there's like, if you look at the stats, the most recent stats that I generally see is from the World Economic Foundation, Foundation and LinkedIn, is that only 22% of women,
Mm.
make up the whole of everybody who works in AI. And
Yep.
then it's much, the figures are much lower for those in research and for those in leadership positions.
Mm.
But the other thing is that I've been seeing is that I don't know if it's by what percentage, but women are less likely to use AI tools,
Mm.
and one of the reasons is because of work. They don't want to be seen like in their workforce as being dumb, that they have to turn to AI.
Wow.
And on the other hand, women, as our skill, as we're different, are more skeptical of the bias and digital violence that we do see in AI. So there's those two competing things, and that's I think a good discussion to have, because at the same time, with the way the world is so rapidly advancing, we don't want to be left behind
Right.
as we're thinking about how to go forward, right?
Plus,
So
imagine the lens of AI if it's 80% shaped by men. Like, it won't reflect the world.
right.
So we need, not just women, we need diverse voices, shepherding in this new technology.
Hmm.
Um, just, women have always had to do more with less, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, yeah, and one of my, I think it's changed a bit, but like I tried doing just an experiment and put, give me people at an office working in AI, and it gave
always
me men and some women, but it was, predominantly men. But a few years ago, I asked a guest, and she said that she did that, and it showed men at computers and women were like on the banisters. So we're getting somewhere, but unless you have,
right.
and the reason I think women to follow and women in AI is so important is that, you need models, for young
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
who are coming up, to see that there are women doing this, and that
Yeah.
they're they need to see examples. That's part of my, whole reason for trying, of spreading this movement. So let's hope that will carry us into the future.
And thank you for doing that work, because I think it's critical. And I think, as a journalist, like, you're part of this movement too, and I'm part of this movement. Like, you don't have to be a technologist. You don't have to be somebody who's building with AI. You can be somebody who's participating and using tools, but using your lens, right, as a journalist, as a
Mm-hmm.
communication person, to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that these conversations happen, and that there's safe space for, like you said, women to see examples of people who, are doing, out there building, and, making the future look even brighter for women. So thank you for the work that you're
No,
doing. Super
thank
important.
you, thank you, thank you. For our listeners and anybody who's watching this on the replay, the question I'll ask you is, what is there any takeaway in terms of what women can do to uh, to be more in the world of AI, while at the same time, protecting themselves?
Mm.
That's a big question. So let's break it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say women should be doing now in this time of this rapid change?
I think childlike curiosity more than anything. Take some time, whether it's like one day a week where you say, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to go play. Like, I will tell you, I've learned more just playing with, the tools, than I have taking, some of these longer courses on AI. So just get comfortable, like, just ask it questions. Don't be afraid to ask AI to help you do something as well. If you're struggling to learn, like somebody like me who's neurodivergent, like, if I'm kind of conversing with AI and I'm finding it very mentally taxing, I will say, I have ADHD. Could you teach me this part of what you're trying to convey to me in a way that's more palatable for me.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
it will say, sure, let me break it up. And would you like visuals? Like, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. So I think play is a big one. I
mhm,
think don't be fearful that you'll lose your humanity. Humanity is going to be your superpower in this next wave.
mhm,
But think about AI as creating systems that will make your life easier, and just the possibilities of it. Like start to, instead of reading articles that tell you how terrible this is for, X industry and this industry, also take a little bit of a positive lens and go learn about, a Sasha Styles or a Rafik Anadol who, is using data and creating these magnificent works of art and just opened the first ever AI art museum in Los Angeles. Like read about the amazing developments in biotech, at the intersection of 3D printing, AI, and medical research, and all the amazing things that are happening. So, yes, we know there's some looming things that are really going to shake up the world, but there's also some incredible advancements that are coming down the pipeline. If I could leave you with one thing, Rose, I would say this, and this is a Keith Grossman line, not a me, but between 1879 and 1903, and you've probably heard me say this a million times, between 1879 and 1903, the airplane, the automobile, the radio, and the telephone were all invented in a 29-year period. If you were born before, they didn't exist. If you were born after, all of those things existed. We're in an arc of development right now where we're just at the beginning of something that is going to be incredibly bigger than that period of time, right? We're going to see developments that we can't even conceive of right now. And that to me is thrilling.
A good time to be alive in the world. Yes, yes. And thank you for being so positive and leaving us with such wise words at the end and through the whole and telling us about your journey. And really is fascinating to hear your story. And it's one of the things I love most about this, what I do, is hearing great people tell their stories. So thank you. Thank you. Please follow Rachel on, I think you have two different handles, Rachel Wilkins Rachel Wilkins B on X.
Yep.
And on Instagram, it's Rachel Wilkins Biz.
It is.
So those should be in the show notes, so those will be on YouTube. You should see links to that. And I hope to be sharing more about what Rachel says. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your comments, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Good night.